Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Chris Morsch. I will be facilitating this afternoon's webinar. Specifically, on your screen, you should see a document that's called H.E.A.T Walkthrough Updates for 2015-16. If you are seeing that document, if you could just go ahead and just chat me, just to let me know that you do see it on the screen. I do not want to make any assumptions. So as I'm talking, if you can just let me know. Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it. Teresa, thank you. Terry, thank you very much. Christine, thank you. And so what the focus of our session is going to be about is the updates that have been provided with the new H.E.A.T walkthrough form, specifically related to the language. Melissa, thank you. And then I would like to focus on another feature of the new H.E.A.T walkthrough. We will call it an option for schools and school districts. It's called the Danielson Crosswalk. And what that is that when you conduct a H.E.A.T walkthrough, when you check off the digital age best practices and the classroom interactions, the system has potential to auto-populate Danielson domains 1, 2, and 3. And so I'm going to be going through those categories with you, the domains. I will show you which elements of the H.E.A.T walkthrough score which items within the Danielson Crosswalk. And I will even share with you the actual algorithms that we use to calculate each one of those categories within the Danielson Crosswalk. And that is included in your second PDF that looks at the specific walkthrough and its alignment to the Danielson Framework. Our attempt is to make this entire process completely transparent so that we have all stakeholders aware of precisely which categories, which items from the walkthrough populate which sections of the Danielson domains 1, 2, and 3. Before I go any further, I do want to comment that the Danielson Crosswalk, we do not include domain 4 because that basically is a domain that is not seen during the walkthrough protocol. So it has been left off the auto-populated section of the walkthrough report. Number 2, no item in Danielson domains 1, 2, and 3 can be scored unsatisfactorily or ineffective because our focus with that crosswalk is to provide a source for professional development and conversation. In no way, shape, or form is it to be used for evaluation purposes. It's just to help to promote continuous improvement in the classroom. So I just want to just start off there just by saying that the overall attempt at what we've done with the 2015-16 version of the H.E.A.T walkthrough is to really focus on what happens during the 180 plus days of instruction, not just the 1 or 2 days that a teacher is being formally evaluated. In other words, what does that rhythm of instruction look like on a day-to-day basis, and how can we as leaders, as coaches, as mentors help to facilitate conversation within any one of the domains of the any one of the categories within the domains of the Danielson Framework to be able to promote improved instruction in the classroom. So having said that, on your screen you should see where it says H.E.A.T Walkthrough Updates for 2015-16. I wanted to highlight the one section that we did change related to the H.E.A.T walkthroughs in terms of the actual wording, and that is within the area of authentic connections. If you can turn your attention to the scoring for level 3 and level 4, previously the wording stated the learning experience provides limited real-world relevance, and then a 4, the learning experience provides extensive real-world relevance. We felt that that was not specific enough, and there wasn't the level of reliability between scoring of those two items. So on the left side, we have the new scoring for the new authentic connections look for. So in lieu of limited real world, it is now the learning experience emphasizes real-world content connections made by the teacher. We think this is specific and will help us and help all of our colleagues throughout the state in terms of making sure that we're looking at the specific look-fors relative to the scoring. You'll also notice that with score 4, previously it said the learning experience provides extensive real-world relevance. That has been changed to the learning experience focuses on students exploring, discussing real-world content connections. So with that, those were the only changes that we made with the H.E.A.T portion of the walkthrough. And again, that's to add greater clarity and consistency when we're conducting walkthroughs in the classroom. The other item that has been added to the walkthrough itself is the Danielson Crosswalk add-on. Again, this is an add-on feature that if you, at the end of my session today, if it's something that you want to continue with it within your school or school district, we'd be excited if you wanted to do that. If not, it is optional, and if you contact our office or Fred Saunders specifically with LoTi Connection, he would be happy to turn off that option so that it does not report to a teacher the actual domains 1, 2, and 3 of the framework. I'm scrolling down right now to share the new section that was added to the H.E.A.T walkthrough, and that's called Classroom Interactions. And it consists of specific statements from the Danielson Framework for teaching that is to be used if you're actually going to be using the crosswalk portion of the walkthrough report. And again, that language was taken specifically from Danielson because we felt that the existing walkthrough form did not have enough language to adequately address and adequately be able to score domains 1, 2, 3, and 4, or excuse me, domains 1, 2, and 3. So you can see the sections that was added in the look-fors. Student misconceptions of the content skills are anticipated. Students assess their own work or the work of their peers. Teacher-student interactions are positive, respectful, sensitive to cultural differences. Instructional duties enhance the rhythm of instruction. Students self-monitor their own behavior. Students can articulate learning expectations. And last, students set their own instructional outcomes based on feedback. And again, the reason why this was added to the walkthrough is that we did not have sufficient information to approximate a scoring for one or more of the categories within the Danielson framework. So the other point I wanted to make related to the walkthroughs itself is that last year, if you scored any of the categories within the Digital Age Best Practices, it really did not affect the H.E.A.T level scores. But this year, everything is live, so that if you do score the Digital Age Best Practices, as well as the classroom interactions, that will directly affect the ratings that's included with the Danielson Crosswalk. So I just want to make sure that everyone notes that. And at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and just pause for a minute to have you reflect on the few concepts that I addressed, including the new section on classroom interactions, as well as the modification that we made to the Authentic Connection section of the H.E.A.T walkthrough. So I'm going to go ahead and pause for 60 seconds to see if anyone wants to chat me up with any comments or questions related to the current H.E.A.T walkthrough form for 2015-16. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch forms now so that we can talk specifically about the Danielson Crosswalk. And this is the H.E.A.T Danielson Snapshot alignment form for Pennsylvania. And again, as I did earlier, if you can go ahead and just please just drop me a short chat that you do see the Danielson Snapshot alignment on your screen, and then we will go ahead and go through each of the three domains and how it aligns to the H.E.A.T walkthrough. Thank you, Leslie. Okay. First of all, let me go ahead and just provide a brief overview. If you're looking at the form, you should be looking at Domain 1, Planning and Preparation. And going across the top from left to right, you'll see a column called Danielson Elements. And what we did was we highlighted the specific look-fors within that specific category as stated in the Danielson Framework for Teaching in terms of what's stated on the rubric as well as what is summarized for each one of those categories comprising the framework. Next to that, to the right, is the H.E.A.T walkthrough categories that directly correspond to those Danielson elements. And if you take a look to the right, it shows which specific levels of the scoring that you do complete during a walkthrough, how it applies to the distinguished category, the proficient category, and the needs improvement category. Again, as I stated earlier, there is no unsatisfactory or ineffective related to the walkthrough because the walkthrough is non-evaluative. This is just to give feedback to teachers in terms of how they can improve in any one of these areas. So we see this process as strictly staff development related. So again, if we take a look, for example, at 1B, demonstrating knowledge of students, you'll see that under Danielson, what are the key elements? Knowledge of child and adolescent development, the learning process, students' skills, knowledge, and language proficiency, students' interests and cultural heritage, students' special needs. And if you look to the right, it shows under H.E.A.T walkthrough, what are the categories that one would score in order to register a distinguished, proficient, or needs improvement rating during a 5 to 7 minute walkthrough. And if you note, it highlights for distinguished digital age best practices, accelerating individual growth through vertical differentiation, which is spelled out specifically in the Danielson Framework for demonstrating knowledge of students. You have a second digital age best practice, accelerating individual growth through horizontal differentiation. And when we talk about horizontal differentiation, we're referencing specifically students' interests, learning modalities, multiple intelligences, cultural background. So again, that ties directly to the Danielson elements for demonstrating knowledge of students. We also have a section on higher order thinking, clarifying student understanding with formative assessments. So all three of those, all three of those categories, if they're checked, that would register distinguished within 1B, demonstrating knowledge of students. And as you move to the right, you'll see what would result in a score of proficient. And you notice the OR statements that separate vertical, horizontal differentiation and clarifying student understanding with formative assessments. Again, to score distinguished, one would have to score all three of those items. To score proficient, one would need to score at least one of those items. And again, I want to remind everyone that when we're talking about clarifying student understanding with formative assessments, we're referencing those informal assessment checks that are used throughout the course of a learning episode to confirm student learning of the content. And then if you notice what would constitute needs improvement is that if we scored students explaining learning at the recall level or students collaborate to report what they've learned. Again, that implies lower level skill development related to cognitive processing. And so basically that is an example that I wanted to use for scoring domain 1, that illustration of 1B. And again, when we went to create the actual algorithms for this, which we have included in this handout, we just basically took what were the key look-fors within the Danielson language for each one of those categories that's scored as part of the Danielson Crosswalk. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and I hope you can look on your own document if you had a chance to print it out. You can see the actual scoring of which categories and at what levels you would need to check off during the H.E.A.T walkthrough that would generate either a distinguished, proficient, or needs improvement rating during the Danielson Crosswalk. If you see items in blank, that means that when you're actually conducting a walkthrough, if you have insufficient evidence to score an item and leave it blank, the system assumes that's an NA. And so oftentimes during an actual walkthrough, or if you look at the crosswalk report, instead of given a category a score, it will come up as NA, and that just simply means there wasn't enough evidence to be able to score that particular item. So as I'm scrolling down, I want to go ahead and move on to domain 2. Excuse me. In domain 2, we have classroom environment, and the one that I would like to highlight specifically is establishing a culture for learning. If you take a look at the Danielson elements under establishing a culture for learning, importance of the content and of learning, expectations for learning and achievement, student pride and work, and then you can see the 3 corresponding elements within the H.E.A.T walkthrough that are directly associated with a distinguished rating, a proficient rating, or a needs improvement rating. So in this case, to achieve a distinguished rating on the walkthrough, the person conducting the actual walkthrough would have to score under higher order thinking, students justifying learning at a strategic thinking level. And again, that ties directly to that culture of learning of high level rigor, as stated by Danielson. Engaged learning, students collaborate to define the task, the process, and or the solution, because there's specific language in there about the learning experience being more student directed. And then under authentic connections, the learning experience provides the opportunity for students to apply their content understanding to a real-world situation. So again, the focus is on rigor and relevance as stated in the Danielson Framework. And then as you move to proficient and needs improvement, you can see the exact levels that would need to be scored and how they correspond to the Danielson elements. So that is, and as I each of the elements within domain 2
Chris, it looks like we lost you for a second. Let's see if we can get him back here.
by the way, if I can go ahead and I was temporarily removed from my network. I want to make sure that everyone can hear what I am saying, or that you're still logged in. So if you don't mind, if you can just quickly just chat me a message saying still here or yes, I would really appreciate that. Okay, thank you very much. I was a little bit concerned when you get thrown off on the network. So again, just to give the big picture, our intent is not to add another evaluation related to Danielson for teachers. It's more to focus on the use of the Danielson Framework as a living document, something that we want to see on a day-to-day basis. And again, that's not looking at evaluation on a 1 to 2 day period. It's looking at the whole experience over 180 days. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Again, we're looking at domain 2, and I just illustrated the category 2B, establishing a culture of learning, and I highlighted which sections of the HEAT walkthrough are scored, and the specific scoring, how it relates to the distinguished, to the proficient, and needs improvement categories. And now I'm going to move to domain 3, instruction. Again, I'm taking a look at using questioning and discussion techniques, which happens to be domain 3B. And the key look-fors under Danielson: quality of question prompts, discussion techniques, student participation. Charlotte also talks about student-generated questions. So if you take a look at what triggers the scoring for 3B using questioning and discussion techniques, that would be in the realm of higher order thinking and digital age best practices. For higher order thinking, students arrange learning at the extended thinking level. So that's where we start to see an element of higher level thinking tied to the questioning process. We also included the digital age best practices of bolstering purposeful inquiry through student questions. And that comes up, I believe, 4 or 5 times in the entire Danielson framework, this emphasis, especially at the distinguished level, of student-generated questions. And so, again, those are the 2 items that, if marked, would trigger a distinguished rating. And then if you take a look at proficient as well as needs improvement, you see that they do not require student-generated questions, because student-generated questions is talked about repeatedly at the distinguished category within the Danielson framework. And I'm going to go ahead and move on down. And I'm going to take a look at 3D using assessment and instruction. And if you take a look at the Danielson elements: assessment criteria, monitoring of student learning, feedback to students, students self-assess and monitor of progress, and you can see the 3 corresponding elements within the HEAT walkthrough that are responsible for a rating of either distinguished, proficient, or needs improvement. For distinguished, you notice in digital age best practices that you would have to check clarifying student understanding with formative assessments. And again, formative assessments refer to both formal assessments, such as benchmarking that is done in schools, as well as informal assessments to confirm student learning, ranging from think pair shares to think pair squares to exit tickets, core response, hand signals. Again, those comprise that section called clarifying understanding with formative assessments. You notice that you would also have to check on the classroom interaction of students assess their own work or the work of their peers, which is taken directly from the Danielson Framework for Teaching, as well as a second classroom interaction. Students set their own instructional outcomes based on feedback. So our whole focus behind this Danielson Crosswalk was to maintain a high sense of fidelity between the Danielson Framework for Teaching and the results from the HEAT walkthrough and the Danielson Crosswalk. So I'm going to go ahead, and if I don't have any chats going on or chat messages, I'm going to go ahead and continue down. And I want to go ahead and come to this section called Appendix A. And what we did here, and typically this is not seen except by someone working with our programming team, this shows the actual algorithm that is used in the walkthrough that generates the HEAT crosswalk. And again, each one of those sections ties directly to the prior section where I showed you which sections that you would have to check on the HEAT walkthrough in order to generate a score or generate a rating on the Danielson domains for 1, 2, and 3. We opted to include this page because we wanted all of our stakeholders in Pennsylvania to see exactly how any one of those items is rated. What is the specific look-fors that need to be checked off on the HEAT walkthrough, and then how does it relate back to the Danielson elements? So We're not asking anyone to commit Appendix A to memory. We just want to let you know that this is the process that we used in the spirit of transparency to see exactly how we generated the ratings and how we generated the Danielson Crosswalk. Again, the purpose behind it was to use it as a tool for conversation and professional development and not evaluation. And as I had indicated earlier in my opening remarks, the Danielson Crosswalk has been added for this year as we see it as a feature. However, if there's any school or school district that would not like to put it in place this year or would like to have it wait for a later time, this is strictly optional. You can contact Fred Saunders, my colleague with LoTi Connection, and he would be happy to turn off this option if this is something that your campus is not ready to move toward at this time. So again, this document includes the specific look-fors that are tied directly to the Danielson Crosswalk. I want to remind everyone that if you do opt to use the Danielson Crosswalk, every item is live. That means that if you don't score an item under Digital Age Best Practices, or if you don't score an item under Classroom Interactions, the system assumes that it was not there. So, and that may affect how someone is rated on their Danielson Crosswalk for distinguished or for ranging from distinguished to proficient to needs improvement. So I've been doing quite a bit of the talking. In fact, I think I'm the only one that can do the talking right now. But I would like to open it up for conversation, for feedback, for questions. And so I'm going to be taking a look at the chat section of our webinar to see if you do have any questions or if you have any comments or anything that I can possibly clarify for you. I would like to do that at this time. Or if you would like to go back and talk to members of your district evaluation team, or if you would like to consult with someone else and then get back to us in the future, we are available at any time to respond to any questions that you might have. I have a question. Does every teacher need a walkthrough? Well, according to the KTO, obviously there are specific teachers that are included as part of the KTO grant that would require a walkthrough, at least two, one at the beginning of the year and one at the end. But I think you can tell by this crosswalk, our hope is that if you're going to be conducting walkthroughs, you'll be conducting several walkthroughs throughout the school year in order to provide a source for conversation with teachers in terms of how to improve practice. So does every teacher need a walkthrough? In my opinion, every teacher does need a walkthrough if the focus is on staff development, if the focus is on continuous improvement in the classroom. Is the walkthrough template online? The answer is yes. We do have an app for it that in my prior document, we have ways that you can upload it to either a mobile device or whether you want to access it online directly via a laptop. That is something that is at your option that you can have access to. If you need any assistance, again, my colleague Fred Saunders would be more than happy to help you in any capacity that he can. By the way, I'm just pausing for a moment to see if there's any additional questions. By the way, I do want to remind my colleagues that if you would like to have more information on how the Danielson Crosswalk is scored or its alignment to the framework for teaching itself, please do not hesitate to contact me directly via phone or email, and the same with contacting Fred Saunders. If you would like to set up a phone conversation or an expanded meeting where we can actually demonstrate each of the sections with you. Again, that would require more time than this brief webinar. But if this is something that you would like to see piloted at one of your schools, having a more detailed conversation, I think, would be very appropriate. Again, I want to just make sure that everyone understands our offer to provide follow-up if you need more detail on how to score any one of those elements with the new H.E.A.T walkthrough form.